What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Trail, a college baseball recruiting podcast. I'm here with fellow host of the podcast, Sam Scharf, and we're going to talk about endgame strategy. Endgame strategy is finding the right school fit, obviously scholarships, financial aid, all of the components that go into that. But Sam, the first question I got to ask for you is, how do we define finding the right school fit? Obviously, we've been at Showcase, we've been at camps. Hopefully, we've done our email campaigns. We're in communication with college coaches, and now we're trying to pick the one for us. How do you describe the right school fit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, first and foremost, anytime, I've advised a player and family, it's imperative that you go visit, right? You got to get on campus. You got to get a chance to look at what that day-to-day life is going to entail and sit in the room, with your future college coach potentially and have a really good conversation, right? That gut feel coming out of that visit is going to tell you a lot about whether or not it is a fit, right? But I think that the best way to summarize it is it's a place where you can excel on the field, in the classroom as a person, right? And if you've done that, you're probably going to have a really good experience across those 4 years. Oftentimes, right, if you're not getting an opportunity to play, everything else is going to suffer, right? Your schoolwork, your relationships, and those things. So you got to get the baseball part right. As a student athlete, your day to day is going to be built around your sport, right? So you want to be happy. You want to be in a situation where you feel like you're getting a chance to compete for playing time and ultimately, at some point in your career, have a pathway to the field. In terms of the academics, obviously being in a situation where you can pursue a major that's going to set you up for your career path is important, right? Like the NCAA had that famous line, right? You're going to go, pro in something other than sports, and that holds true for obviously the overwhelming majority of student athletes at the college level. So making sure that you're taking care of your career goals is obviously instrumental as well. And then as a person, right, like you want to be in a space where you're supported, where you have coaches that have your back, and that you're going to have great relationships with your teammates, going forward. And if you do all that, it's going to work, ultimately. So I think that's really how we define fit. Obviously, there is the affordability component, right, of making the college choice and how that factors into, your family's decision making and whether that's, um, you know, student loans or, covering total cost, right? However, you need to go about that, based on a lot of different factors, household income, siblings, um, you know, those are obviously at a very individualized level, but, making school more affordable always seems to be a commonality, right, amongst any player family, regardless of the athletic component. And, the one thing I would say there is money is money, right? And at the end of the day, making school more affordable, whether that's athletic aid, academic merit, or financial aid, the goal is to get the total cost in a situation that's attainable for your family. Um, One is not more valuable than the other. Um, I've had guys go to Division One schools as preferred walk-ons and have great playing careers. I've had young men go to that level with significant scholarship, 50+%, and it not work out. So it's not a predetermination in terms of whether or not you're going to be successful in that program. Make school more affordable. Understand ways to do that. Right, certain schools, can stack aid. Right, baseball package with merit, and obviously that's going to be a pretty lucrative opportunity. Obviously our sport is, partial scholarship. Right, there's at the Division One level, fully funded program is 11.7. Division Two is 9, and then obviously at the Division Three level, you have no athletic aid, just merit packages based on your academic success and financial aid. I always say this, maybe most coaches won't admit it, but as a recruit, you're going to have some more opportunity at the Division Three level to be rewarded financially through those two avenues. But it's really important to understand how the finances work at the institutions and the overall goal of making school more affordable. You got to kind of check your ego at the door, and 50% versus 25% of athletic aid um, doesn't mean that more money is a better fit for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talk a little bit about in detail about the scholarships and how it works for baseball. So obviously we know 11.7, but I think where people get confused is it's not straight up just like, oh, well, you can only give scholarships to 11.7 kids. Again, there's no 0.7. How does it work in terms of, you keep mentioning the percentages? How does in-state factor in for state institutions? I could probably talk a little bit in detail about stacking the financial aid, the scholarship academically with athletic, with my experiences, but just kind of explain people kind of the surface level of scholarships and how it's spread out and what the total amount allotted to a team is, not basically with that 11.7 spread out through a team.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, obviously from an in-state perspective, right? Anytime you're dealing with an institution of that uh, makeup, it's going to be more financially rewarding for both the program and the player, right? The total cost because of that in-state tuition is going to be less. So, a partial scholarship of that smaller tuition helps the program, and then obviously total cost is going to be at a much, you know, more manageable number from the beginning of that, um, cost analysis, versus private schools where, I mean, at this point inside of the college market, you have, schools that are $80,000+ a year, right? So those numbers are going to be much harder to work down when you're talking about, even 25, 50%. So again, this is where you can't just look at the scholarship percentage and say, hey, that's a better deal, right? 50% of 80,000 versus 25% of 25,000. When we now start to look at the affordability, right, the total cost, those are drastically different financial situations.
Definitely. And I think that's very important for people to understand, as well as how private institutions are able to stack scholarships, right? You mentioned
Sure.
some schools are not able to do this. So keep that in mind. It's not a linear process where some schools only will make you pick academic and financial or
Yep.
athletic, but the majority of private schools are going to be able to offer where you can get your merit scholarship, where you can get your financial aid package, and then the amount that's left, athletics can kind of say, okay, well, we're going to put 25% into that, or we're going to put 50 to
Sure.
cover the rest. So you're basically going to be, in an affordable standpoint. And understanding, you've probably, if you're listening to this, you're like, okay, I've heard stacking a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of explain that a little bit in detail. So basically what it is let's just say hypothetical university charges 45,000 for full tuition. You're a good student. You're a 3.0 student or 3.4 student, unweighted GPA. You get 18,000 per year in merit scholarship. So private institutions are able to offer merit scholarship based off of academic success. So they offer 18,000. So we're going to make me do math on air here. That brings you to 27,000 right there in scholarship. Let's say you get a $5,000 a year financial aid package. That brings you down to 22,000 in terms of full tuition. So you've taken that 45 to 22. Then athletics is able to come in and offer a component based off of that big number. It's not based off of the 22, it's based off of the big number. So that if they give 25% to you, that is stacked on top of academic and financial aid. So it would be 25% of 45, which I'm definitely not going to do that math in air and on air and try to subtract that. So I should have went with a more clear number, like 40,000, and it would have been 10,000. So, but that's something to keep in mind when we're going through this process, and where the reason why the percentages in terms of athletic aid could be smaller is most universities don't let athletic departments or athletic programs go above merit scholarship, or you have to pick one, right? I don't know if that's NCAA rule. I don't know if that's university rule, but the majority of the time. So if you earn 24,000 in merit athletic departments or athletic programs can't go above 24, or you have to pick one. So most
Right.
universities will kind of cap it at that number and be able to stack those two because you're going to get more in the long run. So that's another reason why 25% is not linear for X university versus Y university, because 25% stacked with a merit could be completely different than 50% with no merit stacking. And again, when we're talking about finding the right offer and making sure we get that information, that's very important to keep in mind. And I know there's no question within that, but I'd love to kind of hear you build off of the things I said to kind of hammer that point home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you're fortunate to be in a situation where you have, multiple offers, right, it's important to understand the starting price and then total cost, right, per year, and how that, again, works into your family dynamic. And this becomes obviously the financial component of a decision. And then again, you have to then look back at those other important aspects on the field, in the classroom as a person, right? Because um, if affordability is not the sole reason for making a decision, right? Sometimes because of a financial um, threshold that a family is confronted with, right, the affordability of school really becomes their chief concern, right? If you're in a fortunate enough situation as a family, as a player, where yes, we want to make school more affordable, but we can afford an assortment of different price points, you really then have to get back to those other key areas. Because, again, just because there's a higher athletic scholarship on the table doesn't mean it's the right fit for you.
Definitely. And I think that's, again, we're creating these conversations, creating this dialogue so we can all better understand when we're getting to those points where those offers are on the table, that we fully understand what it is, right? Not just being fooled by the fact that it's like, well, we're giving you 75%. So that's great. It's like 75% of 80 grand versus, 25% stacked with merit, and conversations like that, especially when we only have 11.7 to hand out, right? And I think
Sure.
another conversation, we're going to kind of swing this to baseball a little bit. I don't know if we've had this conversation with this catalog that we've had these different discussions, but finding the right fit baseball wise, right? The first question I always ask kids when I was recruiting, and now that I'm in the outside space of working with families and individuals, is, do you want to play or do you want to win? And I think that's a really important conversation to have, because I've had this conversation with 18-year-olds. Every 18-year-old says the same thing. Well, coach, both. Because they think that's what you want to hear sitting across the desk from him, which is fair. I want to hear both. But the
Sure.
reality is that programs that win a lot also have really talented players, and you might have to sit an extra year. You might have to explore other opportunities because the next recruiting class might have another dude that plays your position, or in the realities of college baseball, which we'll have another episode to talk about, the transfer portal opens up, and said Division
Yep.
three program, said Division two program has an opportunity to add a Division one level talent that plays your position, and they might think you're great, but they might think he's better. And you might
Yep.
have to reflect on the point that when programs want to win and they want to build a consistent contender, there's always competition. On the opposite end of that spectrum, and this is not to talk down on any programs, I played at one. Guess what? I played at an organization where we won 15 to 20 games a year. I played center. I pitched. I hit third for 3 years. I transferred to a program that won a lot. I didn't play as much, right? So understanding the balance of those two, where it's like, if your genuine number one goal is to play college baseball for the experience of being on the field, getting 120 to 150 to 200 at bats a year, pitching, being a two-way, understanding what the right fit is for you from that standpoint of like, well, I want to play for 4 years. It's like, yeah, that's great, but I also want to win 4 conference championships. It's like, well,
For sure.
conference champions probably have all Americans up the middle that play your position, and it's going to be a little bit more competitive, high strung environment. So, kind of talk at least how you go about that conversation and making sure families fully understand, like, hey, this program's also really talented.
Yeah, for sure. I always try and discount the, hey, I want to play as a freshman, because that's so difficult, right? Those
Yes.
are anomalies. Like, you need to go into that program and earn the coach's trust and prove that you're a piece that can help them win games, right? And that's most likely going to take a year. So don't make a decision based on immediate playing time, right? You want to be in a place where they're going to continue to develop you. I think in today's college baseball landscape as well, it's important to understand how programs construct their roster, right? Like you're talking about the portal, right? Is 50% of their roster from the transfer portal, right? Um, Probably something that you need to be aware of. Does that program have a track record and put a precedent on recruiting high school talent and developing them, and then you know filling in the holes through the transfer portal, right? Like those are two different strategies in terms of how college programs in today's landscape, go about putting together their roster. Um, the fact is everybody recruits the portal, right? Ultimately, it's a necessity in today's landscape because there's so much player movement across all levels. So, you need to be able to put a competitive team on the field, but certain programs definitely lean to the extremes of those two methods, right? And understanding how they go about it, I think is really important when you start to talk about end game strategy, right? Are you going to a place where you know their their best players, right, or the guys who are getting significant playing time started in the program as freshmen, not necessarily played as freshmen, but started in the program as freshmen, and there was a trajectory towards significant play time and being an everyday, player, or hey, are the weekend rotation and the you know majority of their positional players, guys via the portal. Again, not right or wrong, but it's just the landscape of college baseball today, and you need to understand how those programs, recruit and how they build out their roster, and is that what you're looking for? Right. Ultimately, your pathway is going to be individualized. There's guys, you know, um, at programs that obviously have had a ton of success in the portal, but were high school recruits, right? So it's not one size fits all. But I think having a good understanding of what you're going to encounter at that program becomes really important as you start to get into that end game decision making and finding that fit for you in a place where you're most likely to excel. Right. At the end of the day, we can't predict the future, right? Coaching changes, injuries, um, those are all things that have a chance of occurring throughout the course of your time on campus. But there's no way for us to predict those things.
Mm-hmm.
As a player in a family, um, the most you can do is surround yourself with people in your circle that are going to give you the relevant information at that moment in the recruiting process to make the most informed decision.
Yeah. And the reason this conversation is important is because in both of our spaces, right, in both of our positions, we don't like to see kids go to college, hit the portal, go to college, hit the portal. We want to
Yep,
find individuals to find the right schools that they stay at for 4 years, right? And that's the
for
reason
sure.
why the right offer, the right fit, all of these things are important to have these conversations. Is we get it. In the landscape of college baseball today, there are going to be opportunities, and we hope ultimately that it's positive opportunities. It's forward growth. It's
For
things
sure.
like that come to this. But the thing that pains me the most is seeing a kid commit to a college and then he's in the portal and talking to me again in the summer of his freshman year because the opportunities weren't what he thought it was, and he didn't make the best informed decision for him and his career and his individual career and his families and what he was looking for. And that's why these conversations are important, because ultimately Sam and I think I can speak for Sam here, want to see you pick a school and stay at that school for 4 5 years and have a ton of success both on the field, off the field, socially, in every aspect of the college experience. And then you're able to say, hey, I made an informed decision when I was 18, which is very hard. Looking back at when I was 18, didn't make a ton of informed decisions, but I made an informed decision when I was 18 because I looked at it the right way and made sure to make the right decision.
There's no doubt. I mean, I think um, the worst commitment out there is when you see a kid announce he's going to a certain school, and you know everybody kind of looks at each other and go, "That's not going to work," right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate to be that negative guy, but it happens, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has, different intentions right at that point in the recruiting process. But if you have a collection of people that have seen you play and other college coaches, and that's the sentiment, there's a pretty good likelihood that you're going to be in the portal in the next 1 to 2 years. And that just
Yep.
is what it shouldn't be about. I think, um, we've gotten so infatuated with commitment, right? Commitment announcements, graphics, edits, all these things, that have become part of the celebratory moment of committing. And it should be something that is celebrated, right? It's the culmination of a lot of hard work. But we shouldn't be putting it on a pedestal in terms of that being the seminal moment. It really should be about success, right? And being able to go to that place and have a great career, right? The mountaintop shouldn't be the commitment. It should just be the next part of the journey in terms of you being a successful student athlete at that university. And that's something that, I know, at CSA we talk a lot about with our players, and I think needs to be more a part of the conversation. Yes, welcoming. There's going to be the obligatory Instagram post. There's going to be, the signing day celebration at school. And those things are cool. And like I said, I would never want to rob a student athlete of those things, or minimize it to a point where it's not something that they can look fondly upon. But those shouldn't be the mountaintop, right? It's
Yep.
now about getting to that institution, to that program, and being successful. And can you put yourself in a place where, again, you've got a chance to be an everyday player, a conference type arm, or significant arm out of the bullpen, a chance to be a all conference, all region guy, right? Like those should be your goals, right? And obviously be a part of a program that you're going to be able to win and get a chance to, play in a regional, super regional, get a chance to play in Omaha if you're lucky enough, or the Division II or Division III World Series. Like those are lifelong memories. And I've been fortunate to coach some guys who have played in the Division III World Series. A couple of young men who were on the Eastern Connecticut team that won the whole thing a few years back, and those are things that nobody's going to be able to take away from them, right? And they're not discounted because it was a Division III World Series. Like those guys are, they're rock stars because of what they were able to accomplish as a part of that program, and are held in high regard in terms of that, that institution. So those are things that if you get there, it's gonna stay with you for a long, long time, well after your playing days are done. So that's really what it should be about. Obviously, there's a lot to consider as you make that choice. Whether it's the scholarship, financial part that we talked about, obviously the academics as well, and setting yourself up for that 40-year decision. But on the field, those should really be the goals. It shouldn't be about what looks good on your IG profile. It's got to be about where I can go have the best career, achieve obviously some individual success, and then be a part of a program that's going to put me on a stage to achieve at the highest level of the sport.
No doubt, no doubt. 10 years after your playing career, you're not going to look back at your commitment post and remember that I got 3,000 likes and 45 comments on it, right? And that's just the reality at the end of the day.
Yeah.
A lot of times we prioritize that when we're 18, and we think that that's going to be the thing that's going to get us that, the recognition that we're looking for our hard work and things like that. But it's about the memories, it's about the experiences, and making sure you have the proper end game strategy is the main key to making sure those experiences and memories last a lifetime, right? And I think that's why this conversation is important. And if you like what you're hearing, make sure to check the rest of our recruiting 101 catalog on the Backside Groundballs Media YouTube channel. We also have full episodes of The Trail that will be coming out both on podcast platforms and the YouTube channel as well, hopefully here soon. If you have any questions for Sam and I, or any of our friends in the industry as well, feel free to email us at backsideGB@gmail.com. Again, that's backsideGB@gmail.com. We'll get back to those. We'll answer them on a podcast. Either of us would even be willing to hop on a 30-minute phone call to answer any questions. So do not hesitate to reach out. As I always like to say, abuse us as a resource. Don't just use us. So make sure you take advantage of that. Our social media DMs are always open. So if you have any questions over anything we've discussed in the catalog, make sure to reach out. That's what we're doing this for. That's why we're building this platform. That's why we started this podcast, is to help families be more informed about the muddy water that is the college baseball baseball recruiting landscape. So make sure to reach out, subscribe to the channel for more, follow us on all podcast platforms and social media channels. And until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of The Trail.